And yes, we will share the live stream link. Sophia will do that now. All right, Sophia, are you pressing the big red button? She says that she is.
The big red button has been pressed. It's just loading.
Okay. This is an exciting time for us going live. So without much further ado, unless anybody has any questions, I'm going to just hand over to Akil, who's going to talk, and hopefully, I mean, definitely, give you guys a sort of, yeah, something to think about and something to discuss.
I've got the option to record here. Can I record this?
Of course, yeah.
Thank you. I'll stop recording when we get to the discussion. It's just I actually want to capture some of this stuff because it's like thinking out loud is good for me.
Cool.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Akil. I hope you're well. Before I start these things, I'm actually going to share my screen because that makes the most sense. Let's see. Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so the deal is, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm a bit rusty, so I'm gonna do an exercise with everyone to get to know you, get to connect with you a little bit better, and just calm us down. So I'm gonna count to 3, and we're gonna take 3 deep breaths. I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, and then breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. It's just to like calm us down and helps me focus. So do you mind joining me to do this? Yeah, it's okay. All right. So 3, 2, 1, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, and breathe out. Okay, that's good. I feel better now. Thank you. It just helps me calm down before I do these things. I don't know, I always get a little bit nervous. So today I'm here to meet new people and make friends. So drop me a message afterwards. Feel free to take a screenshot of that. I genuinely like to meet people, so I use these as a great way of like introducing myself to others. My name is Akil Benjamin. I'm many things, but today I am a researcher and strategist at Kamuzi, and the name of my talk is Anti-Discriminatory Research Practices. Now, when Lucy said, when we got sent the question here, it was like, okay, how do we go about communicating the practice and the thinking and the whole framework around what we do here, and how we go about making sure that we're inclusive, our work is inclusive and accessible as possible. And so I kind of came up with this as a thought. So please do, like, it'd be lovely if we critique it at the end, if we ask questions of it, if we interrogate it, because I just do actually want to improve the thought, because if we can contribute to the practice, I'd love to. So that's my job title. And this is my studio. Kamuzi is we call it a radically purposeful design studio. I think that's just because of the work we choose. And we understand both research and design is political. We understand that when you choose a project and when you choose to listen to one group versus over another, or you choose to lean in a certain way, you're making political decisions most of the time. And so understanding this, we call ourselves a radically purposeful design studio because we try and always resolve the community need with the strategic need. And we try and not leave people out along the way. Believe it or not, this is our team, and believe it or not, this is a radical team photograph of many of our studio. Not many studios are made up of 5 Black people all in one place. I don't understand why this is radical, but it is. And so this is the definition tag that we have, and I love all those people in this picture. I think it's interesting to show you this as well, though. The reason why I'm showing you these things, it'll make sense, is because if you know who you are and if you know your values and you start knowing your process, you can actually know where you stand with a lot of these things, with a lot of the isms that we face, racism, sexism, or ableism, or any of these things, and you'll finally know where you stand. And once you know where you stand, you'll be able to make a choice and decision. And so with Kamuzi, our values are play, our values are being experimental, being rigorous, being tech forward thinking, and being activists through empowerment. We're playful because we believe that if we believe we're rigid and structured all the time, we're just going to produce like cookie cutter stuff. We believe that it won't allow us the freedom of mind or body or spirit to actually come up or reimagine spaces and think products and services that we need to. And we believe play reduces a huge boundary to accessing these ideas and opportunities. We experiment a lot. If I test this, what happens? If I do this, what's the output? We're always really super aware of our process and super aware of what we're doing, because once we start being able to manipulate or pull levers or move people in a certain way, that's all very interesting. But you then have to understand what's the impact, what happens, what you do this for, why are you doing this? We do radically purposeful work, and that sounds like it's radioactive. So we're rigorous in our process. We go through things twice. We're rigorous in our documentation to make sure people understand and can follow what we're doing, and we're rigorous in our testing to make sure all those experiments that we're running are safe, that look after people and don't further marginalize any groups. Because we're saying we're doing experimentation doesn't mean it's not safe. Technology forward thinking is a value that we have of ours. It doesn't mean we have to use the latest technology, but it means we have to use the right technology. And I believe that takes time and forethought to go and use the right technology for the right community to make sure they have the right levels of access and opportunity with the service or product you're trying to deliver. Lastly, this piece of activism through empowerment, like I believe, I'll show you this later, but I believe your professional work does become your activism. And for me, I've decided to take all the skills I've learned doing research, doing service design, doing strategy work, and apply that to my community, and I've applied that to space where it's not just someone paying me a check to do this, or they are, but it's like apply this to my community space where I can maybe make a difference, not just in the commercial world, but for the people around me too. So those are our values, and this is what I'm going to be talking you through today. So our process, of the anti-discriminatory research practices as a viewpoint. I'm going to talk you through two projects that we've done, one with Everyone and the other with Wellcome Trust, understanding patient data. I'm going to give you some practical tips. Don't worry, they're not copious, they're actually just some questions. And I'm going to talk to you about what this looks like in an applied setting outside the commercial space. So hopefully by the time we finish it, you should get a breadth of what anti-discriminatory research practices can look like. So we have a 6-stage process. It's good to understand your processes. The reason why it's good to understand your processes is because once you understand the most critical moments for input, once you understand the most critical moments where someone's voice makes a difference, you can start mapping out how you can augment your processes to be anti-discriminatory. And the reason why I say augment your processes is because I actually don't think there's anything wrong with research processes. We've been refining them for a number of years. It's just over a while in our tradition, who we choose to listen to and how we choose to produce our work, and some of those formats I think are not adequate enough for the audiences and communities we're trying to serve. And so just mapping you out the process here gives you an opportunity where gives me an opportunity to explain to you where we can make a difference. So when we frame a piece of work, we try and look to understand its strategic objectives. And understand the audience we're trying to serve. When we immerse ourselves in a piece of work, we make sure we go and almost like live and breathe and to understand our audience's lived experience with whatever we're talking about, be that a pair of shoes or their health and well-being or their understanding of patient data. We try and unify our concepts. We try and unify our strategic direction with what we've heard to produce insights and lead us in a direction. When we do that, though, we've got these insights, we've got this bank of research and synthesized knowledge. We ideate on how we can communicate that. We concept new ways of communicating that. We don't believe that community, we don't believe our work is reports. We believe our work is tangible. We believe people should be able to look, feel, touch, and interact with our work, with that being policy work or product work or commercial work. And so with that in mind, we're always dreaming about inventing new ways to bring this to life. This is really interesting, though. The reason why I love this part of the work is because just similar to the immerse stage, we co-create. We invite participants in. We invite the people we're researching with and the people we're looking to affect into this process, so that we give ourselves the best opportunity to deliver on their goals and their needs in a format that makes sense. When we make things, Alex is one of my best friends. He's our creative technologist, and when we make things, we're always making things that like spark people's imagination, but also give people one source of truth. When I find when we do a lot of policy writing, when we do a lot of research writing, when we do a lot of insight writing, we write it in a way that leaves a lot to the imagination. And that's good sometimes, but it's bad other times, because now if you send 100 people away, you get 100 different permutations of what you just spoke about. When we produce these prototypes, when we produce these products and tangibles, we show one source of truth, which really helps people understand where we're coming from and understand how you can manifest those insights into real space. Navigate is a strategic workshop that we put on the end of every project to help people understand how they can use the work, how they can apply the work, how they can create space for the work within their own environments. And I think that's really important, because once you do work like ours, or once you write policy, or once you make something new, giving people clear, tangible instructions about how they can use it really does help its adoption and how you carry it forward. So with regards to some of this work, it's, oh, I've got a slide in the wrong place. But regards to some of this work, my question is, how do you make this a practice? Nope. Wrong button. Computer, go away. Sorry, team. It's just human today. But my conversation is, okay, what does this anti-discriminatory research practice look like? What if you had a viewpoint of it? Could we understand what it is? Or is it just a series of words that Akil is saying out loud? And it made me ask this question: are you aware of the critical points in your research where input makes a difference? And I guess I still didn't get the slide in the right place. But the point is, this is what it looks like. I asked the question of, when you first do your work and you get your challenge question or you get your framework, are you aware of the impact you're looking to create? Like the primary, secondary, and tertiary uses of your research. Like, we produce work every day that's used way beyond the scope of what we initially intended for. And so can we actually start understanding its impacts and how it might be used, so we can start thinking about our future ways of working with this data, telling these stories and communicating them moving forward? Have you considered the input and the voices who's in your research? I think hard to reach is a really lazy term. I think the more we see it on, people hire us for it because they believe we're specialists, but what we do is we just take a lot more time and energy to do so, and we factor that time in and we budget for that time, and so that the project's not at worst for it, if like we can actually make sure we go and get the research audiences that we need. Are we listening? Our perspectives is, are we willing to listen meaningfully and accept alternative viewpoints as valid? I think with a lot of work we do or a lot of work we could be doing for governments or organizations or local councils or whatever, there might be a tendency to say, oh yeah, everything's great, I've done the research, I looked into it, oh yeah, let's gloss over the smooth parts. But I feel that giving people the friction of the truth really gives you an opportunity to go in a new direction, to zig and zag in a new place, and to like really listen and see new opportunities in the spaces where you previously may not have. And then delivery, how do you communicate your insights? How do you communicate your work? I don't believe, like, I really have a difficulty in understanding how we're still writing 60-page reports, because I last time checked who read them. And so I really believe we do need to innovate on some of these formats. So are you aware of the consequences of your work? I think that's a really big question. Do you know what your work's used for, or is this just you getting the check? I do. Our work is political. I believe all research work is political in one way, shape, or form. It informs, and then as much as we say it's not, in this day and age, especially if we're using it in commercial spaces or using it to design public services or using it to improve space, I really do believe it is. And understanding that so you can act and communicate appropriately in that space, I think is important. Is it really about a representative sample? I'm going to show you some projects that we have, but the question is it really about a representative sample? Because sometimes you have to really ask what you're representing. Like, am I really representing a racist view? Am I really representing a nationally sexist view? Am I really representing an overly ableist view? And most likely you would be if you just go for a national representative sample or representative sample of your community. And so what does that say to your piece of work? Like at the end of the day, all the insights you have will be skewed. And so my next question is like, what are you really representing? And I think that should be a really mindful decision when you produce work and when you're trying to communicate and articulate things. I've been asking this question for months, but it seems to really get under people's skin. Are you brave enough to listen when you have those insights and you see a comment, an offhand comment from a small minority group? Of course, it won't come up in large volumes. It's a small minority group, but it's been said, and so should the weight of their words be a little bit heavier compared to the rest of the group, who's like the majority? Very interesting questions, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts, but I believe we have to be brave enough to listen if we're going to progress forward, instead of getting us out of these cycles where we're doing the same things again and again and again. Now, my funnel came from this kind of this image, and this image I saw on Instagram first. I saw it from a friend of mine, Serena Abassi. She used to be head of diversity and inclusion at MNC Saatchi Worldwide. And it was really interesting because it showed like the different steps, right? You have to really, you fear what you're doing, you learn, and then you grow. And in ours, you starts with, okay, there's a self-awareness. I think fear is also a part of a self-awareness. And so when I say, do you understand what you're doing? Do you understand the consequences of your work? Like, are you self-aware? Once you start interrogating that and you start questioning the input and listening to different perspectives, I believe you're learning. And then I believe if we learn how to deliver this work really effectively so that audiences, not outside of our own communities, but wider audiences, especially the people who we're producing the work about, can understand it, I believe we'll be able to push our work to an area of growth. Are you brave enough to listen? I got this from an Instagram post. Does this count as valid? I think it does, because I really trust Serena's voice when it comes down to this and her expertise, but this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Where are we actually getting our information from? Where is our input? What is our input? And I think we should start to be open to these new spaces. I think we are, but I think we should be really, really open, explicitly open to these new spaces, because this is where a lot of the world is right now. Not all of it, and that's a digital inclusivity is a different conversation, but it's not really, it's the part of the same because it's anti-discriminatory, but it's like, are you open to this? If you weren't being paid to, would you read your own 40-page report? I struggle to answer this question every time, but I don't think I would, and I think that's really a really important question to ask yourself at all times. I do understand people read literature. I was reading a study the other day that people used to do their research on LSD and write as fictional novels to communicate the research, because the research was illegal. Like, what else can we do? How can we get innovative with this work? I've seen the best research be told as fables, and so it really does make me think, how best can we do this, and how can we bring our creativity to this in a way that still respects the meaningfulness of this work. So I'm going to talk you through 2 projects about how we brought this stuff to life, because I believe it seems really abstract in the cloud, and I didn't want to do that. I want to bring this to life and show you how in real projects this really makes a difference. So working with .everyone, we asked the question, how might we create financial and social safety nets for low agency gig economy workers? This was a part of their Better Work campaign, and we community worked with .everyone and used our Connecting with Communities framework to invite low agency gig workers to co-create prototypes and solutions for their workplace challenges. So similar to the process I told you, we have a strategic objective. We've defined our research audience, low agency gig worker. We've co-created with them. We've prototyped and tested with them to address their challenges and help them move forward. And this was the challenge question, right? And I'll show you how we broke it down. We said assist, okay, by prototyping potential solutions. We knew what we wanted to create, and we knew how we wanted to communicate our work, and we had a forward view on that lens. and we said low agency. So we realized if we got a representative sample of the gig economy workforce as it was described in the literature, what we might end up with is seeing designers on there that get paid £500 a day but are just working through Fiverr. Now that wasn't the people that are actually in precarious positions with the gig economy work that we talk about. Once we drilled into it, we understood that we wanted to represent the low agency gig worker. The low agency gig, if we describe agency as power, motivation, and knowledge, we understood that a low agency gig worker was deficient in any one of those things, especially power, to change their circumstances. We looked to improve people's financial health and longer term career choices. And so when we made this definition of low agency gig worker, you see how we really took a point of view to ask ourselves, who were we looking to represent? Whose story were we looking to tell, and whose voice were we looking to hear? When we're doing this work, also, Everyone was in liaison with a lot of gig platforms. And a big challenge and a big tension with this work was, are they willing to hear what we have to say? These insights are not brutal to their work because, hey, I think it's the truth that needs to be shared, but these insights can make someone feel a type of way, again, elicit a visceral reaction. So understanding this now, how you go about communicating work is interesting. We did some insight work with many of the participants. We invited them in, we incentivized them to make sure that they could take time off work to come and talk to us. We made sure that we met them in accessible places that felt comfortable and private. We made sure we put all this effort into this because we realized we wanted to augment our research practice and open it up to a wider audience. When we did this work, also, we really asked who were we trying to listen to. We made sure that our audience was at least 50% from people with Black and Asian ethnic minorities, as they make up a large majority of this workforce, right? Especially this low agency workforce. And so we thought it was very important to have those people participate in that conversation. We also made sure that we had we had representation from female drivers and female gig workers. The reason being is because as much as they don't do this job often, when they do this job, they are very much likely to experience a lot of sexual and physical harassment. Sexual, physical, and verbal harassment. So why are we not listening to their voice? Why are we not seeking their voice out? We think it's imperative to do so. And so you see how our sampling methods go from making a representative sample to more of a sample of represented views. And I think that's really interesting. These are some of the insights that we have. Sorry, let me just take a sip. Sorry. So this is some of the insights that we have. Many gig workers experience verbal, racial, and physical abuse from other members of society outside the gig economy. Many of the working conditions make a perfect storm for poor mental health. Gig workers who manage their pay monthly have better money management than people who manage their pay weekly. Got a typo there, apologies. And with that, it's really interesting because how money is linked to mental health and how the concept of poverty is linked to mental health is really interesting. So if we help people manage their money better, can we remove one of the aspects that make it this perfect storm for their mental health to depreciate? The other people having an algorithm as a boss really does impact them and keep them in the dark of what's going on, and that is a form of control. Is a form of algorithmic control over these people, and if you don't recognize that, then whoa, what conversation are we going to have? And gig workers wanted to know more about their employment rights. So these are really interesting, but these are our insights. And so now we've listened. We were brave enough to listen. We were brave enough to write these things down. And so what do we want to communicate? How are we going to communicate this? Everyone did write a 40-page report, but alongside that, what they did was they really tried to prototype new ways of getting people to understand what this new positive view looks like if we're going to make a difference. This is a prototype of something they created. They created Fair Work to exemplify best practice. Gig platforms that do best practice. It's almost like your fair trade logo. Do gig platforms want to adopt something like this to show that they are looking after their staff, paying them a decent wage, giving them the tools they need to pay their taxes? These are questions that we wanted to ask. And so this allowed us to prototype something we call Avocargo. Avocargo is a fictional avocado delivery app, but we'll show you from the persona, the customer side, but also the courier side, how making small design tweaks can then start, you can then start implementing your insights practically into space. And so this is what I'm starting to talk about with delivery. How do you deliver this so more people understand what on earth you're talking about? Hopefully it plays because I set this thing to play. There's no sound, but I'll talk you through it. So avocado customer, normal customer. I just want some avocado toast today. I'm gonna scroll down. I'm gonna make whatever selection. But do I actually know after a while how my price breaks down? This is really interesting. Since we've done this work, we've actually seen platforms evolve their communication. But it's finally showed you how much money you actually spent on the delivery driver, how much money you spent on the platform, and how much money you spent for the individual. And it tells you about how they're supporting workers' rights to make sure that you can keep making conscientious decisions of what platform you use to share your money, or to spend your money, sorry. Also, we realized that, I'll pause this actually, this is a really interesting insight, but a really interesting insight was that some of the gig workers felt faceless, and some of this felt like a number, and that felt like just a number from the platform itself to how people treated them on the street. People, because wearing helmets, people don't see them often. Especially with wearing helmets, people don't see them often. They're just doing deliveries, running around. And so it's like, but I'm here trying to do my degree. I'm here trying to better myself. I'm here trying to go to night school. I'm here trying to do all these things, and the tips ain't happening. The tips are really good, but tips aren't happening. And so how do we make this person less faceless? How do we make them more human? How can we improve the relationship with them to stop that physical, verbal, and like maybe sexual abuse that may happen, or racial abuse that may happen? And like, how do we actually make these people, humanize them in this space and take them away from robots? We said, okay, let's help them tell a story. Do they have a GoFundMe account? Do they have a sponsored link that they want to share? Do they have their music that they want to share? Do they have, I don't know, their travel business that they want to advertise? Who knows, but can we create space for them on the platform to just pull that up for people to support that? That was a really interesting conversation for us. And so you see here how we're trying to use all our insights, and we're trying to really articulate ourselves. We worked hard to articulate ourselves in a space where we can start making a difference. I'll go halfway through. On the alternative side, if you're a courier, you get to see how much you make per delivery, per drop. You get to track your wages because that gives you some visibility on how much money you're earning. You get to track your wages longitudinally over time as well to see how much you earn over time, so you can see if you're in the right place. We also gave them an opportunity to compare some of these tools with their national average to understand if they were in a trough, or to understand if their whole area or region was in a trough, to give them some sort of visibility to what's going on so they can actually go home. Because sometimes people will overwork because they're not getting enough money and they just don't know the market's down. And then they get to see a breakdown of their expenses. This job, all the money they take home is not all the money they receive in revenue is not all the money they take home, like any independent business. And so how might you start understanding what this is really costing you? That's what we tried to show. And so you can see here that we try to really focus on delivery, focus on articulation, focus on listening. And it really makes a difference in understanding that this work was going to be seen by many people, understanding that this work was going to be delivered in the House of Lords. We didn't want our words to be minced, and we also didn't want to get people's back up, but we wanted to give ourselves an opportunity to show them best practice. What a way to show them apart from show them. And so we created a fictional space where feelings couldn't be hurt, and we showed best practice to give people an understanding of the frameworks that they could adopt for their own platforms. So this is some work we just completed with the Understanding Patient Data team at Wellcome Trust. And we follow the similar process for a different purpose. So Understanding Patient Data team's aims is to make use of patient data and make it more visible, understandable, and trustworthy for patients and public health professionals. We worked with them to see if we could inspire healthcare services to find new ways to develop people's understanding of patient data. Patient data is going to be patient data is going to be a big thing across the board, especially now as we've seen our transition through COVID. And we actually did this research through COVID, so it's interesting to see people's thoughts and views going along this work. But as healthcare services are delivered online, how do people manage their data? How do people understand how this data is being used, especially as they're now producing more of it, especially for themselves and others, is really interesting. And the people's assumed rights of this space and the people's actual rights of this space are very different. There's a big experience gap there. And so to communicate that was our goal. We conducted 17 interviews to do this work, 10 public participants and 7 healthcare workers. We made sure that 30% were non-white. We made sure that the social grades were from C1 to E. We made sure that participants identified as pragmatists. This was really interesting because we had to ask ourselves, who were we representing? Pragmatists with regards to how their data was used. Pragmatists and then not absolutionists or not people that said, oh, I don't care. We really wanted to understand people that we could almost inform and change their viewpoint, right? And so making sure that we were listening to that group was really important to us. We made sure that people had uninterrupted internet access. We were doing this work through Corona, so we had to be mindful of our accessibility. But we also had to be mindful of that people who are doing this work may have a disability. How are they going to access this, and how are we going to find out beforehand? There was a lot of work in the logistics of our research and how we planned and prepared participants. We found the best practice right now with doing online research is to send someone a pre-work pack, a pre-research pack, to let them know what's expected of them, the links to get online, when they're meant to be online. This seems like really simple things we can do with a calendar invite, but when this stuff is written down, it just makes it really accessible right there in front of you. And it just could be a slide deck with accessible PDF links or something. We also spoke with people with long-term health conditions. The reason why we chose this community of people is because when talking about public patient data, we believe they would have a clearer understanding of the healthcare service from being in this space so often than others who may be identified as well. We surveyed across the country, we interviewed people across the country. And when we also did this work, we got a broad range of perspectives. We realized doing our research, we listened and realized that the doctor can't do everything. When the government says, oh yeah, the doctor's gonna do it in that 12 minutes. Okay, that's a lie, isn't it? So understanding that they were overwhelmed, we changed our research view to look at other people in the other healthcare professionals in that ecosystem to see how they might be like levers for change and enablers of change in that space. So we spoke to 10 participants. We asked them about the confidence. We asked them about data rights. We asked them about healthcare experience, friends and family, local campaigns, what inspired them. We believed all these things were important because they created a really big picture of people's health and well-being. And here's some of the insights. People don't actively review their healthcare information. So all this, we think you care, we think you care, we think you care. Do people really care? Ooh, it's very interesting. What did we just learn? What did we just listen to? So people know about GDPR, but don't have a full understanding of it. And this leads to confusion and misconceptions about how healthcare data is used and what can be used and what can't. People are drawn to things that raise awareness and make them feel good. Healthcare professionals are inspired by others who put patients first. Many participants have been inspired about how their local world has responded to COVID. So that tells us that if we frame things in a certain way, if we let people know that this is why, or this is for a public good or greater good, we may have an opportunity to make a difference. We understand, we took this insight of healthcare workers as well. We understood that they work in multidisciplinary teams and there's a chain of command. We understood that this concept of networking and doing management and managing up as well as down and managing people around you was going to be really interesting. And some healthcare professionals felt that collecting this information that they were doing. Sorry, Killian, I think you're sneezing. Can you just put your mic on mute for me? And some healthcare professionals feel frustrated and that the collection of healthcare data is a waste of time, but yet still this data is actually the backbone of how we plan and deliver services in NHS. So how do we give people foresight and understanding with this type of stuff is the things that we listen to from this work here. And also they like the new way of communicating during COVID. So transferring things online they're actually open to, watching reruns they're actually open to, doing online events and seminars they're open to, because their life has changed, yes, but also because now there's a new opportunity to do in this space. Lastly, I think I'll leave for these insights. Our big question was value. What does value look like? And we realized value looks like people wanting to improve their quality of life. And so once we started articulating this work as value, how does this impact your health? How does this affect your side effects? What does this allow you to do? Can you drink or not? Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Do you need to go for another test? Making all these things clear and explicit in the way we communicated with patients really helped them understand how their data could be used for positive work. And they understood how information from others was used to inform their care, and they understood how information from their care was used to inform others. And people and healthcare professionals saw value in training. And so what I'm going to show you now is how we took these insights and made some prototypes. We always making, how do we communicate this thing? How do we deliver on what we've just heard in a way that makes sense? Okay, this is going to come with a report too, but these prototypes are easily accessible for people to live, work with, and understand to actually address our challenge question. We redesigned patient letters. So after all this work, we realized that a great opportunity was in patient letters to explain things. And so we redesigned patient letters. We just changed the format of the work, right? So this was a fasting glucose plasma test, fasting plasma glucose test. And okay, what is it? What does your results mean? How can we make this extremely explicit? We could have wrote this as recommendations of 4 bullet points, but we believed in showing people explicitly how this could be realized, and then testing that out and tweaking it and improving it gave people an opportunity to really come along our journey. And we said with this format, the statistics equip patients with a greater understanding and context of their condition and communicating the fact that their care has been informed by data from other people. Not only does the revised format communicate the importance of collecting health data, it helps the patient engage better with their own healthcare journey. We designed some visuals to help people understand how health data is used to inform someone's care. So we made almost like a waiting room like video, so people could just watch this in the waiting room, because we realized people actually read the data in that space. We understand that people read the data in that space. We understand that people actually take information and leaflets, and really our minds are open to understanding what healthcare is about in that space. So why can't we put something new in there? This prompted people to reflect on their own interactions with the healthcare service. It provoked a greater understanding about how healthcare data is used. Some people didn't understand that it was used to develop new treatments and drugs. It clearly shows the specific experiences, how people's specific experiences feed into a bigger picture. That's exactly what we wanted to do. We wanted to go against the national campaign. We didn't want billboards. We wanted tangible places where people could see and start a conversation with others. And we had an option. This option was received well and reflects to the understandability of overall visuals. People are visual learners, and giving them a new way to communicate and understand and interact with this type of knowledge was really interesting. Lastly, for the healthcare professionals, understanding that they were frustrated with how their lack of understanding with why they were collecting data, understanding that they validated? No, that's the wrong word. They valued training and improvement and empowerment of their skills so they could improve better care. Understanding that they were always working in multidisciplinary teams, so they were always up to opening to networking, and because they believed that improved their practice. We decided to say, okay, could we deliver some virtual seminars? And could we deliver a series of virtual seminars to help people improve on their research practices? We understood that from this, we tested 2. It's actually not this one that made the cut, but it was about if you could frame data and the conversation of data within the context of community practice. That's where people really wanted to make a difference, and that's where people really activated to make a difference. And people were open to participating, people were open to sharing, and people were open to going along a journey with us where they went from an audience viewer to a speaker. And I think that's really interesting. Participants viewed this as a clear outline with positive outcomes. They wanted to participate. They felt confident that the seminars would help them improve their work, and they felt the concept, and they were open to the concept of networking and meeting others to improve their care. I thought this was really great. So that's how you put this work into practice. that's how you put this work into how do you communicate with others. That's how you make sure that you're aware of your impacts of your work. You're aware of where it's going to be seen. You're aware of who you're representing and what you're representing. If you're brave enough to listen, how it'll afford you new opportunities. And if you co-create with others, I think what's really interesting here is with all the prototypes we've shown you today, we co-created these with residents, we co-created these with people with healthcare professionals, we co-created these with patients. With Everyone, we co-created this work with gig workers, and we co-created this work with some gig platforms. And so you really see how this level of co-creation, inviting others in, and understanding where people's voices really make a critical difference to the work, really help you move forward. So, okay, I've done a lot of talking. So what does this mean as practical work or as a toolkit? Everyone produced something called a consequence scanning. Consequence scanning is basically these 3 questions, but I think it's really important that you ask them. And you can ask this, I usually ask this at the kickoff of my project, halfway through my project, and at the end of my project. And I really ask myself, what are the intended and unintended consequences of the product or feature that I'm producing? I ask people, what are the positive consequences of what we're focusing on, and what are the consequences we want to mitigate? And I find this really interesting to do because you can do this on this time series. So you could do this 3 times. You could do this for now. You could do this for maybe 6 months time, and you can do this for 18 months time. Or you could do this for now, and you could do this for 5 years time, and you could do this for 10 years time. And if you get enough people in the room, what really makes a difference is the diverse audience in the room. So it's almost critical moment for input. But what really gets interesting is if you have a diverse group of audience in the room, if you do this as an exercise with your stakeholders or your research audience and ask them alongside the project team, what you find out what's really interesting and what people gravitate towards and what people see as value and what people see as not. And that can really make a difference. Always ask, what am I representing? Who am I representing? And who is missing from this conversation? What am I representing? Whose view am I representing? And that's really important to me. And it's not important to me because I want to say, oh, I want to drop the project sometimes. It's just good to know, because knowing where you stand makes a difference. And knowing where you stand allows you to choose a direction to move to. Understanding who you're representing, I think, is important. I've spoken to you about how community is really honed in on specific audiences for specific projects and really over-indexed on hearing their voice. And I think that's important because their voices, if their voice is consistently marginalized and we're consistently producing work from the majority or the representative sample, then sometimes we're gonna be missing things. And we've been missing things for a while. And this is the world we've created. Look around. Ask yourself, do you want to keep creating this stuff or not? And make a choice. And I think that's important. And who is missing from the conversation? You will not get everyone. You won't, but you must try. And I believe it's very important to understand who's missing from the conversation. So if you get more money or a second opportunity or a second opportunity to run at this, you can include them, because the different voices that you have, the diversity of voices that you have, change the impact of your work. Full stop. Is this audience hard to reach, or do I need more time to plan, execute, or recruit? Or do I need to introduce myself to new networks? Or do I need to budget for specialist assistance for this recruit? Do I need to go out there and just go, similar to when I'm doing an international project and get a fixer? Do I need to, in the UK, just find someone who's a fixer and that can pay them to put these people in front of me, and so we can have this conversation? And can I communicate this in an effective way? Another thing I should have put in here is our connecting with communities framework. I do apologize to myself because I wrote it. So the question is, are you brave enough to listen? I think just asking that provokes you. I think it's just a provocative question because it's just like, oh. And I think the choices you make after that will be telling of who you want to, who or what you want to be or do with this project. 21% of people in the UK have a disability. That's 1 in 5. There's 23 people in this call, so there's 26 people in this call, so there's about what, 5 or 6 people here, 5 people here with a disability at least. Actually, not at least, definitely 21%. So what are we saying here? Who are you making for? What are you making for? How are they accessing your work? Like, these things are really important. And this is just one type of like stat to provoke you, but understanding that these voices are here and they're not actually minority voices, or they're not actually, but they're voices that we don't usually see as part of the representative index or what we're trying to measure. But you have to be mindful of this and make sure you ask to hear these voices in your work. I promise you it'll make a difference. And I would say communicate through play, but I think more importantly, the idea is to play. I think it frees you up to get beyond the rigid bounds that you may be used to working in. And the idea might be wild at first, but I'm sure if you test it out and test it with others and temper it a little bit, the essence of the idea, the essence of the joyful idea, or the essence of the playful idea that you had can be brought to the work. And I believe those can make really impactful differences to how you communicate. And so maybe it's not as wild as what you, not even wild, but maybe it's high fidelity is what you see it with community, but you could start working with some infographics, you could start working with some pictures, you could start working with some cartoons, you could start telling some stories, you could start saying, how do I communicate this in 120 characters? I don't know, you could do whatever you want, but there's different ways you can go about it. And I think playing and experimenting with that, with your own research work and how that impacts others and how you can get to communicate with others will make a difference. I'd love to say it. Community is open for business. So thank you very much. This slide is meant to be black. But today, I have to say it, I believe your professional work should be your activism. Our activism works because we do it through empowerment. We believe our activism lies in people's empowerment. And so to show you what applied research looks like, I'm gonna show you this real quick. If I'm tired of seeing dead Black people, and if I'm tired of systemic anti-racism, or systemic racism, what does systemic anti-racism look like? I understand that these things are in play. The research has told me so. The world has told me so. The voices around me have told me so. So I asked the question, how might we deliver the same economic value we have in the commercial worlds for our communities? I think that's really interesting. It gives us an opportunity to build bridges, invest in communities, and develop new relationships if we answer this question correctly. And so I started a project called Mentor Black Business, where we've taken 500 volunteers, 500 mentors from the creative industries, from industries around the country, and we paired them with 500 Black businesses to do mentoring. On both sides, we're providing training, facilitation, anti-racist training, wellness training, how to be a mentor for people who haven't mentored before. For mentees, we're providing them with a mentor, we're providing them with masterclass sessions, we're providing them with resources, we're providing them with all the things that we've been told that don't exist for these communities. And this is how you start using applied research. This is how you start concepting and making a space in which others can participate in. And this is how we're communicating our insights. We're communicating through action. This is one of the sponsorship pictures that go with the program. This is called Seeds of Change. This is by Rankin. And if you'd like to support the program and if you'd like to support the work, please go to blackbusiness.mcsatchu.com and you can get a copy. I think it's rather beautiful, I like it. But thank you. It's nice to hear from you, it's nice to see you, and I hope that all made sense because I realized that was a lot of information. I look forward to hearing what you think.